Room for All, a Catholic approach to 2S LGBTQI+ supports. Prepared by Michael Way Skinner. No portion of this presentation is to be recorded or presented in any forum without the permission of Michael Way Skinner. Video 5 of 5, Room for All, Signs of the Times, a Look at Data. The Signs of the Times, Looking to Research Data. The research of Dr. Caitlin Ryan at San Francisco University provides a framework for consideration. The Family Acceptance Project studied adolescents and young adults who identify as 2S LGBTQI+, and their families to identify more than 100 behaviors that parents and caregivers and communities use to express acceptance and rejection of their 2S LGBTQI+ children, and to link or correlate each of these family reactions with the young person's health and well-being. This research shows that families, caregivers, and communities have a compelling impact on 2S LGBTQI+ children's health and well-being. In particular, 2S LGBTQ+ teens who are highly rejected by their parents and caregivers and communities report very high rates of health and mental health problems in young adulthood. The three groups whose opinions and acceptance mattered most to young people who identify as 2S LGBTQI+ are family, school, and religious community. In Catholic education, we celebrate the rich relationship between family, school, and parish. The data from these surveys support that essential wisdom in Catholic education. The young people surveyed identified 4 experiences on an acceptance continuum. They either experience no to low acceptance or even rejection, some acceptance or tolerance, moderate acceptance, and high acceptance. Young people who identified as 2S LGBTQI+, who experienced no to low acceptance, were more than 8 times as likely to have attempted suicide, nearly 6 times as likely to report high levels of depression, more than 3 times as likely to use illegal drugs, and more than 3 times as likely to participate in sexually risky behavior. Families, as is pointed out by the bishops, are called to integrate deeply held religious values and beliefs with the love of their 2S LGBTQI+ children, to keep families together, increase support, and decrease specific families' behaviors that are linked with high levels of risk for suicide and other serious detrimental outcomes. If we are a pro-life community in Catholic education, and we are enjoined to protect life from conception until natural death, this then is a pro-life issue. If we can prevent 50 less children, 1 less child, from suicide completion because we have moved someone from no to low acceptance to some acceptance, from some acceptance to moderate acceptance, from moderate acceptance to high acceptance, as we are asked to do in the Catechism. If we can move people along this continuum, that is a positive outcome. People worry that there is a promotion of a quote-unquote lifestyle if we accept and support young people. In reality, if they are rejected, they are more likely to engage in sexually risky behaviors. So if we present 100 students, no to low acceptance, this, according to suicide data, is how many quote-unquote that would get to live. If there is some acceptance, if there's moderate acceptance, and if there's high acceptance, In Catholic education, we are harbingers of hope. The Family Acceptance Project explored youth and their sense of adult happiness that they would have in life. We in Catholic education are all about hope. If we compare out of these numbers, that's young people who experience no to low messages of acceptance are far less likely to have any hope for the future. Some it increases, moderate it increases. High messages of acceptance and belonging actually approaches the average population. Hope. We are harbingers of the resurrected hope of our Lord. High degree of acceptance and hope for the future. Moderate degree of acceptance and hope for the future. Some degree of acceptance. Low to no acceptance and hope for the future. As a way of looking at the focus on data, one of the pieces that we did was we offered a series of retreats to young people. And prior to the beginning of the retreat, retreats were 2S LGBTQI focused. Students were asked a series of statements or given a series of statements about gender identity and sexual orientation and church teachings. The focus here is on the teachings of the church, not the experiences of what other people say are the teachings of the church. The focus here is also the teachings of the church, not what people who, in the name of the church, have said and done. So as the students read the series of statements, that the students were asked to circle which statement they believe to be most accurate. Do they believe that church teachings reject and condemn those who identify as 2S LGBTQI+? Or church teachings tolerate those who identify as 2S LGBTQI+? Do church teachings somewhat accept those who identify as 2S LGBTQI+? Or do church teachings value those who identify as 2S LGBTQI+ and accept them with compassion, love, and sensitivity? The statements are set to align with the Family Acceptance Project's categories of acceptance and risk factors. In the selection of which of the statements about church teachings fit most closely with what the students experience to be true or believe to be true, 3% of the students in attendance believed prior to the beginning of the retreat that the church offered messages of low to no acceptance. 20% believed the church offered messages of some acceptance. 39% moderate acceptance. 38% high acceptance. 23% of the students who were beginning the retreat entered the retreat that day in the highest risk categories according to the Family Acceptance Project for suicide, attempts and ideation, sexually risky behavior, substance abuse, and mental health concerns. In the post-retreat, when the students were asked to revisit the statements, there was a shift. 23% believed in that there was some acceptance in the church. 28% believed there was moderate acceptance. 49% believed there was high acceptance. No to low acceptance, none of the students who attended by the end of the retreat were in the highest risk category, 8 times more likely to attempt or ideate suicide, 6 times more likely to be involved in substance abuse, and likewise sexually risky behavior, likewise mental health concerns. No one fit into those categories. So again, if we compare those two, we see a shift, and what we are doing is saving lives and providing messages that encourage students to understand themselves as children of God. So 120 students as a sample. Students who attended the retreats by percentage, who were identifying no to low acceptance in the messaging of the church. 8 students in that percentage would have arrived at the retreats in the highest risk categories for sexually risky behavior, suicide attempts and ideation, substance abuse. In the post-retreat, 0 students identified as being in this high risk category. Some acceptance pre-retreat, some acceptance post-retreat. Moderate acceptance pre-retreat, moderate acceptance post-retreat. And the switch in numbers down in these lower risk categories shifts. High acceptance pre-retreat, high acceptance post-retreat. I always say that if we in our work were working towards saving lives, we've done that in this sampling. In educator workshops, pre and post, we always were aware that an educator has an impact on hundreds of students a day, whether in the classroom, in the home, in the hallways, at supervision duties. And we did the same pre and post workshop piece at the beginning of teacher workshops, educator workshops. In the educator workshops pre, 3%, again aligned with the student numbers, 3% identified that there was low to no acceptance in the teachings of the church. 19% of the educators who were participating identified that there were some messages of acceptance. In the category of moderate messages of acceptance, 55% of the participants pre-retreat identified that as being where the teachings of the church sat. And 23% of educator participants identified that the church offers messages of high acceptance, keeping in mind that every educator represented in this graph has a direct impact on the messages of acceptance that students are receiving in the classroom, in the hallways. The switch post-retreat, 0 of the educators in the post-retreat now identified that the church teachings offer low to no acceptance or rejection. 0 identified that there would be messages of some acceptance. So post-workshop, 0 of the educators would offer to the hundreds of students they encounter these messages that would actually put students in high-risk categories for all of the risk categories that we've mentioned before. 45% of the educators and teachers who were present then identified moderate acceptance as being the message of the church, and 55% identified messages of high acceptance. Educators who offer those 2 levels of categories of messaging to 2S LGBTQI plus young people are saving lives. Again, to cross-reference and compare. And what is the message that we deliver to our young people, to ourselves? We echo Psalm 139:14. I praise you, for I am fearfully and wonderfully made. We are all wonderfully made.